One of my first business coaches taught me you can tell what somebody is committed to by their results. And over time, results make clear your intentions. Now, that's good news or bad news depending on which side of that you're on. For me personally, whenever I've struggled most of my adult life to lose weight, I have to ask myself, what am I committed to? Am I really committed to losing weight, or is there something else that I'm committed to and have a chance to re-choose? In business, you have a chance to re-choose all the time if your results aren't where you want them to be. You have to realize you created those results. Well, the same is true with housing policy. In Los Angeles, my entire adult life, the American dream has slowly been dwindling away to where now the majority of people in our cities cannot afford to buy homes in areas where they work and raise their families, let alone raise them on one income so that the other partner, spouse, can raise a family. And I think this must be the intention, because if you look at the results, it becomes clear. What do I mean by that? Well, here was an article that came out last week in the Housing Wire. Middle class struggling to afford housing once firmly in its grasp. And I think it's great that they're getting that realization. But I think the idea is not like this is a happenstance. This is a decision made by our policymakers that most people won't own houses. More will live in condos or apartments closer to mass transit. That's the decisions that are made, particularly in Los Angeles County, and the state of California. And so if you look at those results, you can't say that over 40 years we're surprised by this. It's been a slow march in this direction. We see houses burned down in Malibu, threatened without being able to rebuild them. We see restaurants not being able to be rebuilt. We shouldn't be surprised. This has been the steady march of change in our city and our county overall. Another example of those numbers, I think, which bear out where our goal is, Redfin reported U.S. homeowner population stops growing for the first time in nearly a decade. And so what's happened now is less people are owning homes. And at the same time, more people are renting. You see the graphs. There's a red graph of homeowners, which is just below where it's been all along, and the blue is now starting to rise. And so this has been a policy that we've been pushing for a period of time, and the results are coming in, unfortunately, that the American dream is increasingly being withheld or out of the reach of the average people in our marketplace. And then we settled for that in our policies. We make decisions about what we do, whether we decide to have policies on energy and immigration and education. All these things have factors into what will people be able to do down the road. So what do our policymakers do? What are the things that are happening in our city and county and state to resolve this so that people have the ability to afford more homes? So unfortunately, it's always the same answer: more taxes and more government programs. So for example, the latest one, the city of Los Angeles is going to spend a record $387 million for affordable housing based on the mansion tax. Now, the mansion tax is a misnomer. It's all property over $5 million, including commercial, industrial, warehouses, multifamily homes, multifamily buildings. So what's happened is the city has accumulated this fund by taking it from wealthy people. And you might say, well, it sounds like a good idea, but none of these city people have experience in real estate development. It's not like they're Rick Caruso or somebody who's built properties or built properties for multifamily units. Grant Cardone in Florida, for example. These are all people who've never really had a job for the most part other than politics. And we're taking $387 million and giving it to them to spend. And as we've seen over and over again, this money ends up in their political cronies' pockets. But even if it's successful, think about this for a second. The average unit, when the city builds an affordable unit, costs $800,000. So that whole $387 million that we've taken from taxpayers is going to build about 490 units in a city with, I don't know, about 6 million low-income people. I mean, overall, in our state, we have 38 million people impoverished in the state of California. I think in LA, we have 4 million, and so we're going to have 489 in low-income housing. Obviously, it doesn't solve the problem, right? Obviously, taking money from one group and giving it to another doesn't solve the problem. It just redistributes the problem. We need to raise a pie for everybody, but somehow our policies are always focused on taking money from one group and giving it to another. Here's another example of that. Governor Newsom has a policy where we're forcing cities that don't want to have low-income housing to pay for it. So it's not enough that the city of LA takes money from wealthy people, mansion tax, or property owners, and builds affordable housing. But the state is going to force cities that don't want to do that, one of which is Norwalk, which basically he's browbeaten legally into forcing them to agree to build homeless shelters and low-income housing where they don't want to. And so now we don't have the right as a city to make those decisions. That has been taken by our state government. And I think that's a troubling sign. But more importantly, in my 40 years as an adult in this business, it hasn't worked. There's no affordable housing area that we're better off now because the housing we built in every market, it's gotten worse. And the answer is not to repeat the same mistakes over and over again. Another example of where city government got involved and it sounded like it made sense, maybe, I don't know. The city of New York cracked down on Airbnbs. Now, they could have taxed them or regulated them like hotels, but instead they made it very hard for people to run Airbnbs in condos and apartments in particular, which are what's in New York. The thinking was that they took them out of Airbnb, they'd force them into the rental market, but the rental market is so bad in New York due to rent control, much like Los Angeles, that their owners would say, you know what, if I can't rent it out Airbnb, I don't even bother with it. It's just not worth getting some deadbeat into my unit and then forever not getting paid rent and having to pay expenses. And so here's a case where New York, a year later of this crackdown, it sounded like a great idea a year ago. Let's get those bad Airbnbs and get them into, make them for housing stock. And the reality is you can't force people to rent property to strangers, especially where you have rent control and protections, I think, that are out of control for the consumer. So overall, I think what we've seen here is a continued policy that is making it harder and harder to own homes on purpose, forcing more people into high rises, mostly rentals on purpose. And is this what we want? And if we want this, great. If you don't want it, I don't want it. I don't think that's the American dream. The American dream, I believe, is people buying a home they can live in on their own, where one income can support it, the other spouse can raise the family, and build communities based on healthy families that can live within their means and have some stake in the game in our economy. Overall, it seems like our policies are moving in the wrong direction, and our results increasingly are looking that way. Now, let's take a look at the economy overall. And I think there's some good news. You know, we every week I look at two parts of the economy. There's supply and demand. And supply is about houses for sale. Demand is driven by mortgage rates, which basically change the effect. It changes what you can afford to buy. It'd be like if prices of cars or diamonds were automatically adjusted based on interest rates. Really, houses, in a sense, are. And so last week, we were really lucky in that we had a drop of rates again. We closed at 6.29, the low on the week, from about 6.5. So almost a 0.25% drop in rates. And you can see these are the lowest in about 11 months, lowest since just before the election results were finalized, around that time, I guess. We had the Fed pushing down rates before the election and then saying they had to keep them high for the last months. And despite the Fed still not lowering rates, the mortgage rates on their own are coming down. And as a result, the effect for a buyer is phenomenal. And we'll get into that in just 1 second. Redfin reports inventory staying low by historical standards, declining in July, which is abnormal. And so we don't have enough homes for sale, partially because more homeowners are staying in place, aging in place. But also they have low rates, and the rates are making it harder for them, and also the cost of moving. And so we have this economy where we don't have more inventory coming in, which keeps prices high, but at least now we have the rates turning around. And so as a result, well, let me get there in a second. Altos looks at the economy overall in Los Angeles, and every market's localized. They have us at a slight seller advantage at 34. 30 would be an equilibrium market. We've been down from 44, 43 a year or two ago, and steadily moving down. They look at all the factors in the market. So LA still is a slight seller's market in most parts. There are pockets that are worse, pockets that are better, but overall that's where we are. Now the cumulative effects I mentioned of the rates dropping, Redfin ran an article, the home buyer on a $3,000 budget has gained $22,000 of purchasing power because of the drop of rates since June, just since June. And what happens is you can see, and this is a great chart if you're interested, on how interest rates going down makes the same monthly payment able to borrow more money by about $22,000 in the case of a $3,000 mortgage payment. And so the other way to look at this is if you bought a house and you're going to sell to somebody, they can afford to pay more by $22,000. Now, and this is for a $300,000 home. Imagine on a $3,000 budget. If you double those numbers, it works up. It's just pure math. And so in LA, where home payments are more like $6,000 or $12,000, the home buyer has saved $44,000 to $88,000 in purchasing power because the rates go down. It's a very powerful effect. Interest rates are a dramatic improvement in the value of property for buyers. It also unlocks for sellers because allows more buyers to be able to buy your house to get up to that price. And then if you're trading up, of course, you're really a buyer net, not a seller. So great numbers, I think, and a good analysis by Redfin that shows us that the overall the affordability is getting better because the drop of interest rates being so significant. I often complain about the real estate industry news. Great article this week, though, in Forbes, which in general I don't think is worth paying for behind the paywall. 6 common traits of successful real estate investors. I think this is true of any successful person in business, these 6 characteristics that they enunciate. Analytical thinkers, I think it's really important to look at data, look at decisions based on information, not based on emotion. Goal setters, if you want to achieve big things, I think you have to break it down, but have a goal and a plan to get there. Lifelong learners, I know personally, I'm learning a lot these days about artificial intelligence and how to use it in my business, but also just to learn how to think using these powerful tools. What are you learning? What books are you reading? Share them with me. Always looking for good new books. But being a lifelong learner is important, I think, to be successful. Real estate investors need to learn about different markets, different products, different strategies. Networking pros, I think one of the things that surprises people is how many people you have to talk to and how many deals you have to look at to buy a good one. And I've listened to key investors tell me over the years they'd look at 100 properties to find one good one. And I think in the market of late, which is more challenging, they have to look at 150 properties. Now, you can use AI to sort through them more quickly, but you can't get 2 or 3 properties sent to you and then think, well, there's nothing to buy. If you're an investor, you're always looking for good investments. And the ones I know who are good, they're networking pros. People around them love them. They're time management masters. I think one of the things you have to understand, if you're self-employed, is that you are employing yourself. I know for me, I try to think of my time like an attorney billing a rate. And if I'm going to do something, it has to be worth the time. For example, if I'm going to go somewhere, and it's an hour each way, that's 2 hours, maybe for an hour or 2 appointment. That appointment has to be very valuable to justify the time there and the travel time there and back. I find I don't really have effective phone calls while driving the same I do at my desk. Now, everybody has their own way of looking at it, but my point is the only thing you have in life, in your business, yourself, is your time. And you have to value it and use it productively. And the last is they're risk conscious. I think that's one of the things I know when I was young, you're excited, you're bold, and you take chances. I've took a couple big chances, and unfortunately both of them missed big in the long run. But you have to be aware of the risk and then find a program that works and re-push that over and over and over again. So again, I thought it was a good article by Forbes magazine that kind of outlined the 6 traits. What are the traits you see in people who are successful? Love to find out your input or suggestions. And what do you read or what do you learn from to help you be more successful in your business? So I'm Bill Gross, and we get together every week. I review the real estate industry news, and I try to put some commentary onto it to show you how I'm thinking about it as a practitioner in this business. What do you see? If I can help, please reach out. I'm at Bill Gross Probate on social media. And as always, make today your best day ever. Thanks so much.